Civil War art is one of the great strengths of Newark Museum. So we have this Civil War piece, Abraham Lincoln by Augustus St. Gaudens, a famous image. He was a famous sculptor, wonderful sculptor of American history, really. So this wonderful piece. And then let's go down to the very end. You can see it from here, the portrait by John Singer Sargent, which is so different from the first portrait I showed you by John Singer of the aristocracy. Now we have the new woman. This is at the very end of the 19th century, and women, for the most part, were not liberated then. But Sargent, who was the most famous portraitist in America and Europe at that time, had a vision of women being liberated. And so he created this picture. This is Charles Thursby with her energy and her intelligence and her action. She's ready to jump up, leap up and go to something. Her jacket is open, showing the kind of freedom that she has, creating great sympathy for the intelligence and energy of women. You'll notice that the painting itself has a lot of impressionistic elements, bold brush strokes and not a lot of detail. The detail is focused on her person. Now we'll go down to the Valentine house. Yes. Have you heard of Valentine beer?
No, I heard about Valentine, but not in the form of beer. Beer,
yeah. It was a very important brand of beer in the turn of the century, or just before that. And so the house we're going to is an actual mansion that was owned by the owner of Valentine Beer, the man who had the corporation. And he was a captain of industry, so he had to have an important house. So what you see is not a typical Victorian mansion, but a very grand mansion. People enjoy thinking how luxurious it was to live in the late 1900s. American galleries. We have a big exhibit of teapots, American teapots.
House and home.
House and home. We're going to change the concept of home and have the Industrial Revolution make a lot of consumer products available to people. Couches such as you see, and chairs, and silverware. And this is how people lived before 1850, very simply, with only a few luxuries, and here's how it changed after the Industrial Revolution. Brought a lot of money and a lot of power to mass produce furnishings. Everybody had the same kind of furnishings. It was a very conformist period. And they wanted to look very grand, and a lot of them looked very European because they're trying to be European and grand. And here's a warehouse of the furniture that you could buy, so how similar it all is. This is what Newark looked like in 1891. It was one of the 3 biggest industrial cities in the country, with over 300 factories and an enormous variety of population. There were immigrants here from every part of the world, and they contributed to the ability of the city to have such skilled labor to produce a mansion like this. This is the mansion, a model of the mansion you're about to go into, and this is a picture of it. And because you had Germans and Swiss and Irish and Jewish residents, there's a map here of where each of the Italians, where they lived. They were all involved in the production of goods. So this house had wood carvers and masons and silver makers and all that could be giving them all of the luxury. So enter now into the grand entryway of this mansion, kept dark as it was in those days. Carved wood, embossed wallpaper, paintings and sculptures to give a wonderful first impression to people who came to this country. Yeah, here was the heart and soul of the family's life. It was the dining room. And there's a little more light in here, so I think we can see a little better. This is how they would eat. Mr. Ballantyne would come in a tuxedo to dinner, and Mrs. Ballantyne would be in a gown, and they would have meals with courses that are listed on a card. 4 courses normally, an extra fish course if there was company. And they were able to enjoy the luxury of very wonderful food prepared for them. And then in this space, very elaborate as you can see, nothing was too much for Victorians. They went overboard on all details. Yes, very opulent, with wonderfully encrusted wallpaper and carved wood. Quite a marvelous sight, right? Now down the hall we'll go over now to the living room. This is the private section of the house on our right, with a study, family library, and the public area is to the left. This was a public room there. They would have their parties and they would impress people, but they also did very nice community gatherings here. Christmas Eve was open to the whole community, and they would come and they would have tea items and enjoy wonderful furnishings. This is about lightness. It's painted, it's not dark wood, it's gilded. Wonderful lace curtains. And these knickknacks from all over the world. They like to show their travel, their education and culture, so they brought things from everywhere.
Oh, gosh.
And then the ultimate in the family relaxation was this wonderful library. It has a Tiffany window by Almudena, and it's on the theme of Ballantyne, which is bearer of fire. That's what Ballantyne means, and so they did it in honor of this house and of this family. So you have it richly decorated, warmth, where the family would enjoy evenings together playing games, and there's Mr. Ballantyne's original desk in the right-hand corner. This light goes up and down, so it get near to the table, and they could play games on the table. Every room has a different wood. Across the way, we have the reception room, where guests would come when they first arrived in order just to sit and wait to be greeted, because they had times when guests desired contemporary African-American gallery. This is one of the pieces. This piece, a woman, a slave, is throwing her baby in the air to save it from slavery. And this is the owner of the slaves with the money coming out, dripping out of his satchel, expressing his despair. The baby dying, It's a very tragic piece, but it's a stunning expression. Evils of slavery. So we're entering the Southeast Asian galleries. We have a lot of images of the Buddha, but the Buddha was not initially represented in his living form. He was represented as a wheel with a lotus. This was a very early depiction, 2nd century, and the Wheel of Law is a depiction from the 7th century, when the Wheel of Law was naming how Buddhism was propagated. So this is a sandstone wheel from Thailand. We're very lucky to have it. It's very rare. It was a piece that wasn't created only to be a piece of art. It's not a wheel that will turn, but it represents the turning of the wheel of life, the cycle that goes from birth through death to reincarnation and around again, the samsara, the endless cycle, as long as people are not conquering their desires. And so it represents how people will live in a good way, seeking truth and wisdom, being good, doing good deeds, and hoping that they have purified themselves in order to get off this earthly plane and go to...
So it's similar to Hinduism?
Yes, it has a lot of features that are similar. They coexisted in India, and a lot of deities were from the Hindus, Buddhism has a great simplicity of a narrative and doesn't have a god. Buddha is the teacher, and this represents his teachings, but because of the close connection with Hinduism, there are a lot of gods, actually, in Tibetan Buddhism especially. Now we're going to the Tibetan area, and our collection of Tibetan is one of the best in the Western world. We started very early, and we've got some wonderful collections, and here we'll start looking at what that is all about. This is the entryway to our Buddhist altar. This was an altar that was created in 1990 and painted in place. And the Buddha, the Dalai Lama, came to consecrate this